Hello, my name is Sarah Young. I'm a guide or docent at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, located in Bentonville, Arkansas. And today I ask you to consider this question. Do artists consciously or unconsciously use the language of flowers to convey meaning in their artwork? A very controversial topic indeed, but for the purpose of this presentation, let's assume there may, and I stress may, be a link. And it may be unconscious, or maybe the artist's own inner subjectivity. This presentation is intended to be informal. Hopefully, most of the information will be correct, but not necessarily to be relied on. And much of it is my own opinion. Also, the titles of the works are also incomplete, but just enough to introduce the paintings and flowers. Symbolism and mythology have surrounded the history of flowers for thousands of years, influencing our responses and provoking emotions. During the Victorian period, the reign of Queen Victoria, from 1837 until her death in 1901, flowers were used as symbols and gestures of sentiments. Artists and writers also assigned meaning to the flowers used in their paintings. Shakespeare used flowers and plants to convey emotion. The plant on the screen is a peony, symbolizing a happy life. And why not? In Asian art, the lotus, which has petals that open when the sun comes up and close at sunset, symbolizes birth and rebirth. It is also true of water lilies. So is that what Paul Lacroix was thinking when he painted his water lilies in 1865? It is now part of the Crystal Bridges collection. The water lily is also seen as a sign of enlightenment by Buddhists because the flowers are rising out of the mud. Paul Lacroix depicted the floating water lilies with an almost specific precision. Each lily is shown with a different angle, giving a more complete picture of the flower. The brightness of the white petals protecting the fragile yellow stamens. It contrasts with the dark colored surroundings and dark hue of the water. Could it be enlightenment rising out of the mud? Coincidental? Maybe, and maybe not. As a flower which blindly follows the sun, sunflowers have become a symbol of infatuation or foolish passion. Yet Vincent van Gogh painted 11 canvases of the flower. None, of course, are in the Crystal Bridges collection. The sunflower paintings have a special significance for Van Gogh. They communicated gratitude. The sunflower is mine, he once declared, and it is clear that the flower had various meanings for him. His paintings, he wrote to his sister in 1890, were almost a cry of anguish while symbolizing gratitude in the rustic sunflower. The different stages in the sunflower's life cycle are shown here, from young bud through to maturity and eventual decay, emphasizing the transient nature of human actions. The sunflowers were perhaps also intended to be a symbol of friendship and a celebration of the beauty and vitality of nature. For some Victorian writers, sunflowers represent a long and lasting happiness, as most varieties stand in full bloom throughout the summer. Good fortune and positive opportunities, a lucky charm for someone beginning a new career path, hopeful of his artistic career, maybe. A conscious or unconscious choice. What do you think? Using a narrow interpretation, the language of flowers was the 19th century code used to make and send messages between lovers and suitors. Each flower had a meaning, and they could be combined to create special messages. The language of flowers originated in France, but it also became popular during Victorian times in Britain and in the United States and other parts of North America. For our purposes today, let's stick to the Victorians, who developed a particularly well-documented, formalized system of florography, or the language of flowers. Even among Victorian writers, there are inconsistencies, so for the purpose of this presentation, we'll primarily use references from the Language of Flowers, compiled and edited by Mrs. L. Burke and published in 1867. It is a recognized florography resource. In art, flowers have been used to symbolize religious and spiritual themes, as well as the beauty of and the role of flowers in our natural world. With the language of flowers, you also have a potential dictionary of meanings, which could also be used as tools, intentional or not, nostalgic, or maybe intuitive. What do you think? So a beautiful work of art, not in the Crystal Bridges collection, but an example of intentional language of flowers coded message, is Orange Crocus, Dwarf Almond, Snowdrop, Blue Navel Wort by Caroline Maria Appleby, created in 1808. It is a small watercolor and held in the RHS Lindley Library in the UK. Caroline Marie Appleby was one of many talented, dedicated, amateur painters who flourished in the first half of the 19th century. As an artist, she is largely unknown, but her works document many of the most fashionable plants of the period, revealing a keen horticultural interest in creating a unique and important record. So now to decode. Navel wort, or forget-me-not, means his true love. Almond means hope. Snowdrop means friendship. Crocus means cheeriness. So could it mean, for example, cheerfully stated, I am happy you are my friend, but I hope to find true love with you. Another possible example, and also not in the Crystal Bridges collection, is Olympia, an 1863 oil painting by Edward Monet, depicting a nude white woman lying on a bed being attended by a black maid. The French government acquired the painting in 1890. With Olympia, Monet reworked the traditional theme of the female nude, using a strong, uncompromising technique. Both the subject matter and its depiction explain the scandal that it caused. Unlike Titian's painting, Venus, this Venus has become a prostitute, challenging the viewer with her calculating look. This profanation of the idealized nude, the very foundation of academic tradition, provoked a violent reaction. Writings tell us that Edward Monet was a playful artist, and he loved to incorporate symbolism into his works. So, perhaps, the red hibiscus in her hair is a symbol of love and passion. It can also represent female power and the ability to attract what you want. So maybe job security? And what about the bouquet of flowers brought to her by her black assistant, whom Olympia pointedly ignores? Tea roses, whose meaning can include, I will remember always. Could it be a symbol of friendship, gratitude, or a fond memory? You decide. So now, wandering primarily through the current collection at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, let's explore the premise that artists may, again, may, consciously or unconsciously use the language of flowers to convey meaning in their artwork. Our first painting is Hollyhocks, created between 1864 and 1865 by John Lafarge. So many of the artists of the late 19th century, including John Lafarge, placed a growing emphasis on decoration and beauty. These artists believed that art had value in and of itself, apart from conveying moral messages or historical narratives. John Lafarge likely had this in mind when he painted Hollyhocks, which may have originally been painted to adorn a dining room. He also took inspiration from many sources, including Japanese screens and scrolls, which is reflected in the painting's long, vertical format. During the Victorian era, the hollyhock symbolized both ambition and fecundity, or the quality or power of producing abundantly. In the language of flowers, he painted over 300 paintings, but then, when commissions were not coming forth, he shifted to decorative work of murals and opalescent stained glass. So is the choice of hollyhock a nod to his own conscious or unconscious choice? Now viewing daisies created by Scott Evans around 1885. In this trompe-l'oeil painting, the artist highlights the daisy. In many cultures, daisies were used to foretell one's romantic future. Remember, as you would pull petals one by one, reciting, "He loves me not," with the final petal foretelling your future. During Victorian times, daisies also symbolized innocence, loyalty, and the ability to keep a secret. The artist's signature, a pseudonym, S.S. David, appears on a scrap of paper nailed to the wooden panel beneath the bouquet, at risk of being washed away. Is the S.S. David pseudonym reflective of his wish to keep a secret, his identity? Is this why he chose daisies? Maybe. Now let's look at Anne Page, painted by Dennis Miller Bunker in 1887. Anne Page was considered a great beauty of her day. In September of 1886, Dennis Miller Bunker wrote to the Boston Socialite a letter stating, "I want to paint you awfully much, but I tremble to ask you to let me, for I know it would take me a long time to do you as I want, and I should not care a bit to do you unless I can make my best work of it." Anne Page agreed to sit for him, and it took Bunker over 6 months to finish the portrait. This portrait of Anne Page is exceptional for its elegant compositional, technical expertise and the haunting beauty of the sitter. Dennis Bunker rendered her face and hands as soft, even light, and placed a withering pink and yellow rose bouquet on a nearby dressing table, possibly intentionally suggesting that her beauty will ultimately fade. In the Victorian language of flowers, the withered roses meant transient impressions or fleeting beauty. The wilting roses can be seen as a symbol of death, or that life may be coming to an end, or it can symbolize loss, as the flowers wilt. It can also be a sign of something lost, the beauty of youth, for example. In less than 3 years after completing this painting, Dennis Miller Bunker fell ill and died of heart failure. He was aged 29. Was the choice of withered roses a premonition or intuition of the shortness of his own life? Interesting. On the other hand, so who doesn't love roses? Our next work is aptly named White, Pink, Yellow, and Red Roses, created by George Cochran Lamblin in 1877. So what might this painting mean in the Victorian language of flowers? Red roses symbolize love and romance. Pink roses symbolize gratitude, grace, admiration, and joy. Yellow roses symbolize friendship. White roses symbolize loyalty, purity, and innocence. So if you receive this bouquet, does the giver mean just friendship or something more? But now look more closely at the painting. There are more yellow roses and the least amount of red, and yet one of the yellow roses is withering. So is there a loss involved? Or is it just a beautiful painting? While living in New York, the artist took up residence at the 10th Street Studio Building. Among the artists he would have met was John Lafarge, whose work Hollyhocks we just examined. It was widely accepted that this friendship would soon inspire Lamblin to devote his later life to the study and depiction of flowers. Later, he returned to Germantown, north of Philadelphia. The area is famous for horticultural activity, and he often painted flowers from his own garden. So implying the language of flowers, the fact that there are more yellow roses in this painting, could it be an unconscious nod to that Lafarge friendship? Why not? Painted in 1887, George de Forest Brush's painting, The Indian and the Lily, is our next exploration. George de Forest Brush spent time in the western U.S. beginning in 1880, spending time with the Arapaho, the Crow, and the Shoshone tribes. And before completing this painting, he visited members of the Apache Nation then imprisoned by the United States government in St. Augustine, Florida. But ignoring the terrible conditions he witnessed, Brush painted a scene of an unidentified Native American man in an idealized world of peace and pristine natures. On the man's back is a roseate spoonbill, almost hunted to extinction by European Americans who used the pink-tinged plumes to decorate women's hats. This artist used the symbolism to suggest the threats facing the Native American people's survival in the late 1800s. But perhaps the addition of the water lily symbolizes his hope of rebirth, wellness, and peace for those endangered peoples. Clara Driscoll was the head of the department of the Tiffany Studios Women's Glass Cutting Department, known as the Tiffany Girls. Around 2,000 pieces of glass were individually selected and cut to make the wisteria lamp that she designed. The durable, long-living wisteria vine lends a meaning of endurance in the face of heartache. According to the Victorian language of flowers, wisteria represents a warning against overpassionate love or obsession, a reference to the choking nature of the vine. It also symbolizes hardiness, as wisteria is one of the earlier flowering plants in the spring, often blooming while there is still snow on the ground. Engaged or married women were not allowed to work at the company, so Driscoll had to leave because of her marriage. She chose a marriage over her career. Could the choice of the wisteria design, consciously or unconsciously, have been evidence of the loss of a career? Now we move forward to meet The Exaltation of Flowers, created by Edward Steichen between 1910 and 1913, part of the Art Bridges collection. While Edward Steichen is known primarily for his photography, he was also an accomplished painter early in his careers. His work in fashion photography and floral paintings coincide with this work of art consisting of 7 panels, which was commissioned by Agnes and Eugene Meyer for their Park Avenue townhouse. It was designed to celebrate the artistic lives of the Meyer family and their close friends, with each figure painted with flowers thought to echo their personal character. The Florence Meyer poppy, imagination and pleasure, a friend, also a symbol of prosperity. Gloxinia, love at first sight. Delphinium, big-hearted. The panels all measure 10 feet high and share stylistic compositions of flattened backgrounds, gold leaf squares, cool toned colors, and blooming flora. Begonia, beware. Perhaps most striking is the portrayal of female figures in dynamic poses, all dressed in loose clothing, a departure from the Victorian era, and an introduction to the new woman, but still using the Victorian language of flowers as introductions. Now moving forward in time, we view the Italian-born Joseph Stella's Red Flower. Although he is most well known for his depictions of industrial America, he remained enamored by Italian peasant textiles and embroidery, featuring vibrant colors, symmetrical patterns, and abstracted forms. Those colors appear here. An immense red amaryllis with widely spread petals dominates the painting, while two birds resembling peacocks flank the flower, raising their elegant heads to its blossoms as if in reverence. In the language of flowers, the amaryllis is defined as pride, strength, and determination, as they stand tall above all other winter blooms. After participating in the 1913 Armory Show, Joseph Stella came under attack from conservative critics that found his modernism threatening. So, is the choice of the amaryllis intentional as a sign of his strength, pride, and determination? Maybe. And moving forward, is the language of flowers still relevant? It was largely forgotten until the beginning of the 20th century. However, interest has been revived since the Duchess of Cambridge intentionally chose flowers for their meanings in her wedding bouquet, including Sweet William for perfection and gallantry, Lilies of the Valley, return of happiness, Ivy, fidelity, Hyacinth, constancy, and Myrtle, the emblem of marriage, hope, and love. And now a couple of last works to consider, also not in the Crystal Bridges collection, is the official portrait of President Barack Obama, completed by artist Kehinde Wiley in 2018 for the National Portrait Gallery. Kehinde Wiley is known for his trademark use of floral backdrops. These defined feminine floral backdrops seem to contrast with his mostly masculine figures, creating tension and drawing attention. In President Obama's portrait, the use of particular flowers was intentional. But let's look at the meanings from that Victorian language of flowers. What do you think? The flora of the painting includes foliage, chrysanthemums, the official flower of Chicago, and according to the Victorian language, symbolizing devoted love, loyalty, happiness, longevity, and joy. Also included is jasmine, symbolic of Hawaii, where the president spent most of his childhood, and symbolizing purity, beauty, innocence, and new beginnings. And then there are the African blue lilies, alluding to the president's late Kenyan father, and indicating spiritually a love letter, retirement, and also happiness. It is a beautiful portrait and a beautiful message. Lastly, back to Crystal Bridges, our last work titled In a Day, She Became the Master of Her House was created by Ronald Jackson in 2019. His masked portraits begin with figures placed behind floral masks. Flowers are being used as a welcoming and non-threatening lens to view the subject. He has stated that he now incorporates masks with imagery that simply interrupts the gaze and challenges the viewer to look past external distractions. In his words, it is his hope that his work can become a catalyst to trigger self-discovery of value, beauty, and significance among people who in some way may feel marginalized. Ronald Jackson's work references his Arkansas rural cultural background and its violent racist history. In many of his works, masked subjects confront your gaze, peer into the heart of the matter with unabashed directness, as if, in his words, they are proclaiming, "You will see me and know that I am beautiful, powerful, and worthy of representation." Looking closely at the painting, I thought that the flowers appeared to be white or cream-colored jasmine, which in the Victorian language of flowers meant purity, beauty, innocence, and new beginnings. I researched his website, which invited contact, so, just because, I sent him an email introducing myself as a guide at Crystal Bridges and asked him if he had chosen specific flowers for his mask and was it, in fact, jasmine. I also mentioned that it was part of a research project addressing the conscious or unconscious selection of specific flowers and contemporary artworks. This is his response. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for reaching out. Is the artwork currently being displayed? And yes, the flower is a type of jasmine flower that represents qualities of femininity and modest beauty. But I didn't select the flower because of its symbology. I later discovered after painting these flowers that they are ironically representing the essence of what I wanted to portray with the character. This could have been incorporated by some conscious knowledge, but no, I was not consciously aware of the symbology at the time I chose to paint them. I have discovered over the years that when I closely observe or study my own artwork in a deep and reflective way, there are things revealed about myself that I've never stopped to notice. I never would have thought of this years ago, but now I truly believe that artists sometimes channel ideas, concepts, and imaginary imagery from sources outside of themselves. Have a great week, Sarah. Best, Ronald. And there you have it. If nothing else, it's a different way to study paintings and their details. But it may also be a lot more. So what do you think?